Hey, so what is up, everyone? It's Flash the Win here. I had a lot of people ask me about, or not a lot of people, but a couple people who wanted to know a little bit more about Brood War and how to really enjoy it, um, and learn on a better level. And this isn't just for people who want to get better at the game. This is more for people who I'm actually gonna turn the volume just a little bit higher so you guys can enjoy the beautiful Korean commentary in the background. Actually, it might be a little too high. We'll put it in there. Hold on, let me just check. Okay, volume's pretty good. I want to say, yeah, I think volume should be fine. Anyways, if it's not, oh well, I can always redo this recording. I don't mind. This is kind of really casual. It's not going to be very, very big, very important for people to watch. It's not like a real commentary. But this is one that is trying to tell people how to watch a game of StarCraft and kind of notice what's going on and what the players are going to be going for, essentially. Like, what are the goals of the game that each player is striving towards in the early, mid, and late game in each matchup. So there's 6 matchups, obviously, total, and I'm going to be making probably 6 videos, one for each matchup. And obviously, I'm not going to be really talking too much about like cheese and like really aggro stuff. I'm going to be more focused on like the timings and the overall picture of the games. So that's kind of going to be how I'm going to be going through all of this. And this is just going to be to help people learn the game and how to watch it. Not to play it, but to watch it. Because as you can see in these FP VODs, it's not really about like, oh, here's how to multitask, here's how to do this and that. It's just going to be, here's what the players are doing, here's why they're doing it, and here's what they're going to be going for in the future and progressing in the game. So this specific game, it's going to be a Terran versus Protoss. I picked this game up because it's relatively long. It does show pretty much the overarching goals of every race throughout the entire game. Obviously, Flash wins this game, just as a spoiler. But I think I'll try to pick a game where both sides win, just kind of show you guys how it works. So this game, the Terran will win, and we're gonna see how it goes about going that. It's gonna be Flash versus Best here on Circuit Breaker, standard map. I'm gonna try to pick the most standard maps possible, Fighting Spear, Circuit Breaker, stuff like that, to try to help with the people, because a lot of people know these maps the best and not really know the other maps as much. For example, if I were to pick some maps like, I don't know, La Mancha as an example. It's very similar to Fighting Spear, but people aren't really familiar with it because La Mancha is not really that popular of a map these days to play on, even though I think it's a great map. Anyways, so Flash opens with the 1-Rax FE. I'm also going to pause the video quite often just to kind of show people what's going on here. So for Flash, you can see here is gone for we call this a gasless expand, where you get a barracks, roughly around 12. So you go depot on 9, barracks on like 11 or 12. And then you get either a supply depot after barracks finishes, or you get a command center, depending on if you scout Protoss first. If Protoss isn't going for any kind of aggressive build, you can go command center first. If they're going for maybe like a fast or 2-gate, you might have to go for the depot and get bunker up really fast and stuff like that. But the point of the gasless expand is it really is trying to push Terran into a much faster timing with all of his stuff, because he's going to have more resources. Whereas if you went for something like a fake double, which is barracks and factory into 6 Marines, 1 tank with spider mines and vultures reinforcing, that is more of a aggressive, kind of get map control. Siege expand is the other factory opener, where you go barracks, gas, factory, siege tanks with siege mode. And in that situation, you're playing a lot more defensively. You're saying, I'm going to play more solid, and I'm just going to get my resources up as fast as possible. And that build actually has changed a little bit. Nowadays, we see a bunker getting added on during the factory, just try to get control of your natural a lot earlier. Whereas the original Siege Expand was just wait for siege tanks. Wait for siege tanks and siege mode to finish, and then lift your command center from the high ground to the low ground as you have siege tanks to back it up. But now people are getting more efficient with the builds and pushing the timings a little bit faster. And that's how the game evolves, essentially. Is every time a new era comes around, builds will generally get pushed more and more into a faster direction. So that's a little bit of a background. If you watch games these days, if you see something like a Siege Expand, you'll notice that there's going to be a bunker and then command center while the factory's still all going down. And that's because, whereas you watch games from the past, like in 2009, 2010, you'll see Siege Expand with Siege Tank, Siege Mode, get the command center, and then lift it off once Siege Mode's finished. Okay, so going to the game, nothing really happened. So this is very standard when you go for a 1 barracks fast expand, is that you'll see the Terran usually either go for a 1 factory or 2 factory. In this case, this is a little bit more old school. You go for 2 factory. A lot of times people would go for 1 factory, and we call this a 1 factory double expand. Is you go for siege expand works on this. 1 racks FE works on this. FE, by the way, is fast expand, short term. If you go on StarCraft, you already know this terminology. But for those who don't and are just getting into it, this is terminology essentially. You'd go one barracks fast expand into 1 factory, get siege tanks out in siege mode, and then go for a 3rd command center behind it. So your economy is super strong. If Protoss is going greedy, getting more bases, you basically don't get punished essentially. But basically, when you go for this bunker in the front and you don't have siege tanks up, Dragoons are going to try to punish this bunker and try to get as much repair minerals and time away from the minerals that the SCVs are using repairing the bunker for as long as possible to kind of even up the game. Because Terran's gotten a little bit of an economic advantage by having the early command center. And excuse me, so now siege mode's done. Flash is now defending his base, and he's also scouting around the map to make sure that Best isn't going for some sort of wonky 2-base timing. He's going for the expansion, so this is going to be going to a macro game. And we know that, if you know the players well, Best is very much known for his macro. He's very good at making sure that he never misses probes. He always is making probes, getting more gateways up, and he's very good in the long-term game. And Flash is also very good at it, which is why obviously he's doing this kind of a build. And you notice he's getting a 3rd command center because he sees that Best has gone for his 3rd nexus. So Flash in this position knows that he can get away with getting a much faster 3rd base than normal because Best is going for this 3rd nexus. But at the same time, Flash had an option here. Flash had the option of actually going for a timing attack off of 2 factories by getting probably like about 5 tanks and then reinforcing with speed vultures and going for maybe a 4 factory timing. This is a build you can look up on Wikipedia, best resource by the way for StarCraft knowledge. But essentially what happens there is you would go for a 4 factory timing, making about 5 to 6, 7 siege tanks with 4 vultures coming out of factories reinforcing constantly. And you would try to pressure. Oh, that is actually insane that Best didn't lose all his probes right there, because that would have just been game over. And by the way, Flash is doing this Vulture Harass. Vultures are essentially, we nicknamed these the free units because they cost only 75 minerals, and you're really using these only in the early game for spider mines and to tank for your siege tanks, which is ironic because tanks and you're tanking for tanks. But these are very flimsy units, but they're very good because of spider mines. They're very good at probe harass, as you can see there. Flash is trying to stall Best for as long as possible, essentially, by killing as many probes as possible. Because Protoss is really trying to ramp up into a strong economy, especially this is how Best plays the game. Strong economy, get as many probes and gateways out as possible, and then he can macro up and keep up with Terran, especially with Flash. Flash is very good at the macro game as well. So notice Flash now getting his 3rd base, while Best just got up his 3rd base. So the 3rd base timings are actually relatively close, which I would say in this position, if you're watching it, you would say, okay, Flash is ahead. And the reason why Flash is ahead is because Best has not punished him for his 1 racks fast expand. He has not punished him for his fast 3rd base, whereas Best's 3rd base was actually slightly delayed because of the engineering block that we saw before, as well as the fact that Flash has gotten a little bit of probe harass with his early vultures. So Flash is ahead in this position, and as a spectator, you're going to be trying to watch for when Best is going to go for his 3rd base, or if he's just going to go for a mass gateway spam and try to end the game fast or deal pressure to his 3rd base. Now, what would end up happening is Best has a choice. Best can either say, I'm too far behind, I need to go for some kind of very aggressive, almost all-in-ish build, where he would throw down like another 4 to 6 gateways off of 3 bases to reach up to 8 to 10. And he's got the Citadel of Adun, as you can see right here, the Citadel of Adun, which would give him access to speed leg upgrades, and he would try to go for just this massive gateway bust and maybe some shuttles on top. And he would just try to bust the Terran to the 3rd base, because right now Terran doesn't have that many units, because he's gone for this very greedy. And look at this, Flash is getting his 4th base. He's playing very greedy because he knows that Best doesn't want to go for this all-in right now. He knows Best is going to look for his 4th and his 5th base, and so Flash can get away with his 4-base play, and which is why a lot of people think Circuit Breakers is very good for Terran. Because of the free 3rd with the mineral only into the 4th base, which gives you the 3rd gas. And by the way, 3 gas is very important for every single race. Protoss needs a 3rd gas essentially to really keep up with the big Arbiter production and the High Templar. Zerg needs 3rd gas because it needs Hive upgrade, which is a must if you want to go for Hive. Is you need 3 gas to really sustain any kind of production. Terran wants 3 gas because it allows them to really ramp up their tank production, get all of their upgrades that they need, so on and so forth. Okay, I'm going to pause the game real quick right here, and we're going to try to analyze the game just a little bit. So Flash has got 4 factories. You might think that's just kind of like a low amount, which it is, but Flash is going for the greedier build where you're going for a lot more expansions early on, and so 4 factories is actually completely fine in this position. We're going to really want to look for him to go for what we call this a factory explosion, where he just starts spamming factories everywhere once you really have the economy ramped up. Like once his 4th base finishes, you'll notice that he'll probably make a couple more rounds of SCVs. He'll probably reach peak resource efficiency on all 4 bases, and then he'll just make like 5-6 more factories to reach up a count of 9 or 10, which is around roughly where you want to be. Actually, on 4 bases, you might want to go up to 11 or 12 factories, but you'll see this very soon. Flash is going to get that 3rd gas very quickly because he wants to get more upgrades. In Terran vs Protoss, the most important timing of the game, we call it the 2-1 timing, which is +2 attack upgrade on your mech units and +1 armor. And what this allows you to do is essentially allows you to 2-shot Dragoons, I think, with siege tanks or like really close to that, and it allows you to survive an extra hit on the Dragoons. Best, on the other hand, is going to try to take more expansions because he needs more mineral intake to get more gateways up. And generally speaking, Protoss, if they want to compete with a Terran that's on late game tech with the mass factories and big upgrades, is they're going to need a lot of gateways because their units do not beat Terran in fair fights. He's also going to look for Arbiters as well. Arbiters are probably the most powerful unit in this matchup, aside from the Carrier, because the Arbiter allows you to do recall, which allows you to recall units into the Terran base. And because of the way that mech units operate, tanks are very slow units. Goliath are very slow units. If you move on to the map with Terran tanks, and they recall into your base, it's very difficult to retreat and go back and save it. So you're going to take a lot of damage as long as the recall is a pretty sizable recall and it's well positioned in the Terran base. And so that's kind of what Protoss will be looking for. Protoss will also be looking for stasis, which basically freezes a clump of units for, I don't actually know the timing of it, I think it's about like 20-30 seconds, I think, something around there, where they just freeze a unit. And in big fights, it's very important to try to stasis big clumps of tanks, because then obviously tanks are useless. Excuse me, and you can run your Dragoons in, and they won't really die that quickly. And so that's what Best will be looking for, is getting more gateways up, getting more of economy up, and getting the Arbiter tech up. And then maybe late game, like he'll start switching into more Templars with Storm upgrades. Storm are very good against tanks. They don't one-shot tanks. But essentially, if you Storm tanks, and then you run a Zealot in there, all the tanks are going to die that just got stormed. He's going to be looking for upgrades as well. +1 attack upgrade on Protoss is actually pretty important to deal with the 2-1 timing, as well as the fact that he's going to go for... obviously, Protoss upgrades aren't as strong as Terran upgrades, but he'll still be going for them just because they're important. And again, just going to expand everywhere and try to slow down Terran as much as possible. So that's the explanation there. Let's go back into the game. In this position right now, we're kind of in the mid-game. Both players are going to jockey for map control, which is exactly what you see with these observers out and the Dragoons out. They're going to try to make sure that there are no real spider mines coming out anywhere to really hinder any kind of Protoss movement around the map. Whereas Flash is going to be putting down a lot of spider mines everywhere to try to slow down Protoss from getting to his base while he sets up a big economy. And now both players on 4 bases. Flash is trying to harass here at this 3rd base at the 3 o'clock position, excuse me. And we'll see Best here going for shuttles now. And Temple Archive Stargate is a sign of the Arbiter Tribunal coming up. And so Flash is now going for his science facility. As you can see, science facility is important for 2 reasons. One, it allows you to get the +2 attack. +1 attack comes for free. +2 attack requires a science facility. So that's the reason why he's getting it. And the second reason is also because he needs to get science vessels out for detection when Arbiters come in, because they cloak units. And as well as the fact that EMP is a very powerful ability that basically destroys Arbiters. If you can land a good EMP on Arbiters, Arbiters can no longer stasis, they can no longer recall. And if you EMP on top of an Arbiter that's on top of Protoss units, the Protoss units will die very quickly because they have no more shields. And I think Zealots are 60 shields, 100 HP, and Dragoons are something like 100 shields. No, not 100 shields. Something like 80 shields, I think, and 120 HP or something like that. So it's almost a little under half their health, which is very important to deal with the Protoss units. You just melt them so fast. As we can see here, Flash has got the +1 upgrade that the observers were just pointing out, which means he's now starting his +2/+1 timing, and only 11:30 into the game. So it's a very fast timing. Again, Flash went for a greedy build. And we can see the gateway explosion here from Best. A lot of gateways. He's got about, I think it was like 12 gateways right there. So that's generally what you want to be right now as he's expanding to his 5th and 6th base soon. And then what Protoss wants to do on multiplayer maps is when you want to take another main base essentially, and again Flash is going for his big factory explosion. You see here he's now got up to 11 factories, again on 4 bases. That's kind of where you want to be, 11 factories. 3 machine shops, and once you get all of your upgrades, you can get it on a 4th machine shop, especially if you can get more gas as well. Because tanks are the best unit in this matchup for Terran. Your tank line is really, really powerful. If you don't have that many tanks, Dragoons are kind of going to run over your army because you just don't have the firepower to deal with them. Vultures on their own, not very good against Dragoons. You definitely need a lot of tanks to deal with them. As well as the fact that splash damage kind of rips through a big Terran army, especially if Protoss doesn't control the army correctly. You'll notice that in a lot of games, especially if you watch old Bisu PvT VODs, is that right before he retired, his PvT was actually very, very bad, which is ironic because Protoss is actually favored in this matchup. But his PvT was really, really bad because he didn't spread out his units in engagements. And you'll see that if you ever watch some of the Bisu videos, and I recommend that. So you can see Best here is making a lot more, and this is again why you have Observers or Dragoons, because you don't want to lose units for free, essentially, to these Spider Mines. But Best is now getting gateways up at that top right-hand base location, and this is because when you're Protoss, you're going to max out on space inside of your main. It's not efficient for you to macro using the entire space of your main. So what you'll do is you start adding gateways on another area, and this will actually help you pincer a Terran army that pushes onto the map, because you'll be able to essentially get 2 halves of your army at 2 places at once. And Terran, unfortunately, doesn't really have this luxury of just getting massive amount of factories, because they need to keep all the units together, whereas Protoss actually wants to flank a Terran with a big amount of Zealots and Dragoons to try to get on top of the tanks. And now you'll notice that Flash is about to get 2-1 timing. He's at 13 minutes and 30 seconds. He's already almost max, essentially. And now he's finishing up the army with a couple Goliaths. And this is the big attack that Terran wants to go for. We're going to pause the video right here to kind of explain to you what you're looking at. Terran, once they get to 2-1 timing, is right when they want to push out. 2-1 timing is by far one of the strongest timings in the game that exists, besides maybe Protoss +1 timing at Zerg, and maybe +1 stim upgrade on Terran versus Zerg. But generally speaking, 2-1 timing is the strongest timing push you can have in the game of StarCraft, because of the way that the Terran moves out with the huge amount of damage that they have behind the upgrades. And this push is designed for a couple reasons. It's not an all-in necessarily, but Terran needs to at least not just insta-lose this push. If he insta-loses this push, he insta-loses the game. Protoss can actually lose this push pretty badly and still come back, which is why people think this is, Protoss' favorite matchup, because if Terran makes one big mistake, he loses the game off of this timing, because he can't reinforce as fast as Protoss can, because now Best is up to probably about 20-25 gateways now, combined from the 2 main bases that he has. So you need to watch carefully for how Flash and Best position their armies. You need to notice where the army positioning is and how Best is trying to slow down Terran to get all of his gateways up and running up at the 2nd main base, and for him to wait for more energy on his Arbiters and his High Templar. That is what you're going to be looking for the most. That is the most important thing you need to see. Flash is going to try to push and look for openings where Best is out of position, and he's going to really need to look to, when he takes fights, to really fight efficiently. That means he needs to siege his tanks on time and hold position his Vultures so that they don't just run off trying to attack Dragoons when Zealots start crashing onto his tanks. It's kind of a battle. It's like Zealots beat tanks, tanks beat Dragoons, and Dragoons beat Vultures, and Vultures beat Zealots. So it's a little cycle, this little circle of counters, and you need to make sure that you micro your units properly. So we'll see in this next fight that's going to be coming up soon how the fight goes, and we'll also be looking for the big EMPs that Flash will have, because Flash definitely has an EMP at this point. So Best isn't really fighting that well right now, because he's kind of trying to slow down this big maxed out Terran force with just a control group of Dragoons, so he's not really fighting efficiently. So Best now is trying to combine the rest of his army up. He's actually not even maxed out at this point. And Flash, you see, is just slow pushing. He's sieging up, waiting for Protoss to pull back, and then unsieging. Pushing forward, waiting for Protoss to try to push forward, like right here, in this position, and then he's going to siege up again. So notice that here, look at Protoss, and Flash will siege with his tanks right here, and you're going to notice that, again, Best is going to pull back. He's not going to engage because he's realizing that Flash is not out of position with his tanks. They're not unsieged. He doesn't have an opportunity to attack. He's not even maxed out right now. Flash is maxed out in comparison, and he needs to wait for a big mistake from Flash. So he's just trying to slow down the push. As you can see, now Flash is going to unsiege right now because Protoss is backing off, and Flash is going to look to continue pushing forward towards the Protoss bases. And yes, here's the unsiege. 2-1 timing is done, and Flash is grabbing a 5th base behind this as well. So you're going to, again, watch for this engagement. Watch for the EMP as well. Is the EMP coming out? The EMP hit the Arbiter. It hit the Arbiter. That's very important. So now the Arbiter has no stasis. Flash is now in a huge advantageous position because he hit the first Arbiter with the EMP. The Arbiter has no stasis field on, and there's probably a second Arbiter that just came out, which is not enough energy for stasis. So now, Protoss against the maxed out Terran without stasis is a very disadvantageous fight for Protoss. It's a very uphill battle right now for Best because he has no stasis. He needs to land the money storms right now, but that requires a lot of micro, a lot of really good engagements by Best. And I just, at this point right now, I would give the huge advantage to Flash. And again, Best is trying to ward away the units. Best again losing units slowly while the push comes out. And again, he's trying to just eke forward once in a while, and you see forcing Flash to try to unsiege siege. They try to slow down this force as much as possible, and he's doing an okay job, but the problem is I think he's bleeding a little too many units right now. And look at this, the Flash's army positioning is almost perfect. Now here comes the fight. We're gonna see what happens here. Not the greatest of storms, only catching 2 tanks there, and there's just way too many tanks behind this, you can see. And Best just lost a ton of zealots there in that engagement, and he's gonna really need a macro. And KT obviously very happy with the push. So let's go back and watch this on a little bit of a slower speed here. That's not what I want. Settings, speed, normal. Let's go to half, or that's a little too slow. Half speed. All right, we're gonna watch this engagement. Sorry for the graphics, again, not the best. So we're gonna see here Flash sieged up perfectly in time in this spot. Look at his tanks already sieged up, and they're about to launch their first volley. And again, there's no stasis right now. So look where Flash's vultures are positioned. When you play a Terran versus Protoss as Terran, you want to make sure that your vultures are inside of your tank line. And the reason for this is, if your vultures are too much in front of your tanks, Dragoons are going to slice right through the vultures, and then Zealots are going to be able to get on top of the tanks. If you keep the vultures on top of your tanks, when the Zealots crash onto your tanks, the vultures are prioritizing the Zealots, not the Dragoons. If the Zealots are in front, or if the Vultures are in front, they actually attack the Dragoons, which is attack inefficient for the Vultures. And you'll notice that Flash will want to also attack the Dragoons with his tanks. So you'll notice that the volleys of tanks are actually going on top of the Dragoons, not the Zealots. Well, actually, there are no more Zealots right now, so it doesn't even matter. But you'll notice that good Terrans, like Flash, will target fire the Dragoons with his tanks, not the Zealots, because if they target fire the Zealots, again, they're being damage inefficient. You want to attack the Dragoons because Dragoons just get slaughtered by tanks, and also I think because they do less damage to light units, which Zealots I think are light units, so they don't do the full damage to Zealots. You notice that Best is actually pinned here against the wall, but Flash doesn't want to push in too much, and the reason why is because his tanks are a little bit out of position. They're still not in range yet to deal with the Dragoons. Whereas and he doesn't want to unsiege and then push forward and siege, because at that point the Protoss units are going to get away. So he pulled back the Vultures, even though he was ahead. Even though he was ahead in that position, he didn't fully engage because his tanks were out of position. And again, slowly pushing forward to the Protoss base and really trying to get a foothold here on the base. Best doing a pretty good job here of stalling out this 5th base, but it doesn't matter because Terran is really efficient with their minerals. You can see Terrans, especially in Terran versus Zerg, sit on 2 bases for like the longest time ever while Zerg is trying to expand all over the map. As a Terran, you don't really need to expand as much as your opponents do, and this is because, again, the way that Terran units are, they're very cost efficient. As long as you keep them alive, you just never need to take another base. And even if you do lose your army, you can sit on these 4 bases for probably the next, I would say, 10 minutes of the game before you have to actually really look for another base. So at this point, Flash has now gotten inside the Protoss line. He's starting to attack the Protoss economy. And a lot of times, you don't need to kill the Protoss army. You just need to kill their bases, because the Protoss lifeline is their economy. If you kill the Protoss army, they're just going to remax because you didn't kill any of the probes, you didn't kill any of their economy. They have 40 gateways behind us. They're pumping out units. If you kill the economy, then whatever Protoss has left is what they have left. They can't produce anymore. So that's the reason why you go after the economy rather than the army of Protoss, which is why when you push, you're not looking for a fight. You're looking to just try to get into the Protoss line and into the defenses, and then siege up like Flash is doing in this position. And so Best is trying to go for this half-assed attack here when he's down like 30 supply. And all these probes are going to be lost. This Nexus is gone. Best is scrambling a little bit. He does. So the important thing is Flash also hasn't gone for the infrastructure, which is another important one. A lot of times Terran will try to go for the infrastructure, like attack this top right base over here, kill off the gateways, and at that point, if he kills off basically all of the gateways, then it's almost impossible for Protoss to ever do anything again. So now you might be wondering, why is Flash attacking the army right now? You just said that he didn't want to attack the army, he wants to attack the economy. Well, this is because Best made a huge blunder. If Protoss makes a big mistake like this, then it's okay to go after the army. Well, and the problem with Best is his army is really, really small right now. And he should be retreating, waiting for reinforcements from both of his gateways, from both of his gateway sets, and both of his mains. Here, he tried to push out to attack Flash's 5th base, but again, Flash doesn't care about that 5th base. Even if Best killed the 5th base, Flash is like, well, you just lost your entire army, I don't care. And the problem is, because Best went for that really bad attack, right here, in this one, let's see where it is, right here, this attack right here, because Best went for a really bad attack, he lost a lot of his army. And then he essentially, because he lost a lot of his army on the map right now is very, very, very small. So Flash can just engage it with a tiny amount of vultures, like he just did when he moved here. So notice how he just engaged with vultures. He doesn't really care, whatever. The army's really, really small. Essentially, game's over at this point. Flash has essentially won the game, I would say, at this point. There's not really much to see. It's just pushing your huge advantage. This Nexus is about to fall. Flash is going to start pushing into the base. You can see at the bottom right, he's up 20 supply. And in general, Protoss wants to be actually like 20 to 30 supply up on a Terran army. Good storms here, not bad. But again, it's a little too late. Best has lost the majority of his army. And the fact that Flash has not really lost any of his tanks is what's really important here. A lot of times you'll see commentators be like, oh wow, Terran's actually really far behind now, because even though he might have a supply advantage, and you see Flash is like pounding out his like bottom lip and he knows the game's over. Even though Terran might have a supply advantage, if it's only in vultures, it doesn't matter. But Flash has barely lost any of his tanks this game, which is why this push is still very scary, because vultures are produced faster than tanks and they reinforce faster than tanks. So if you lose all of your tanks, but you keep all of your vultures, that's good for Protoss, because the reinforcement line is just going to be vultures. It's going to be very flimsy to dragoons, and tanks, you need to keep them up in a high number, because if you lose all of your tanks, it's very slow to reinforce, it's really slow to get the bulk of your army back, and that's exactly what Flash has. He's got the bulk of his army still remaining alive. And Flash may be a little bit overextended here, just a tiny bit. You see he's kind of getting surrounded a little bit, but again, the bottom tanks here, just as I say that, you'll notice that, oh wait, just kidding, he's got a ton of tanks below that he still hasn't lost that many of. And now he's losing a little bit of tanks, but still, you can see the bottom half, he's still got like a full control group of tanks left over. And again, with the slow reinforcement of tanks, that number will slowly build up to 15, to 18, to 21, because they're coming in bunches of 3. So I don't think there's really much else to say about this game. As Flash has killed off 2 bases of Best. He's going to go down, kill that 6 o'clock base. He's going to go kill the natural and then the main, kill all the gateways there. And notice how Flash's economy has not been touched. He hasn't been recalled. A lot of times what will happen is when Terran moves out with the 2-1 timing, they'll try to go for a big recall to counterattack them. And that's kind of how it will be going. Okay? So that's kind of how TVP is played, and the game's over at this point. I really don't think there's much else to say. So this will be the first part of the TVP series where Terran wins. Essentially, it's how to win as Terran. You really need to nail this push, and that's kind of what you're looking for as a spectator. Watch the Terran push, watch what they're doing, so on and so forth. Okay, so that'll be the first replay. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll be back for part 2 where Protoss is the one that wins. We'll see how Protoss deals with the Terran.